Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Creative Connections webinar. This week, we are very enthusiastic to have with us the marvellous Dr. Tristan Schultz of the Gamilaraay people, exploring the topic, workshops and facilitating online. My name is Ian R.T. Collis. I'm a member of the Darabalapp clan of the Gamilaraay people, and the grandson of the late Auntie Dawn Collis. As a Darabalapp man of the Gamilaraay, I pay my deep respect to country. I also pay my respect to the Gadigal of the Eora, where I stand today. As a coexisting member of the oldest surviving cultures in the world, indeed the known universe, I'm a result of this never never, the dreaming. I am a result, or what my grandmother would frequently remind me of, a byproduct of reconciliation. In the spirit, I would like to ask you, as my grandmother had before me, to take our hand and to stand with my peoples. Listen, not just acknowledge, but to action. Be open to learn and to walk forward in the transformative power of reconciliation. To join with us a story that is older than time itself. In paying my respects to the Gadigal of the Eora, I describe country. It is a country surrounded by salt water, light, and sky. It's the country that has magnificent cliff faces, with ocean smashing into it, daily carving its existence. It has small to medium slopes and very few mountains, abundant in cheerful birds who sing me awake every day. I pay my deep respects to elders past, present, and our future, honouring custodianship, while recognising the strength and capacity of our past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clan groups and language groups. If you would like, please share with me the country in which you are coming from today within the chat feature. India, wow. Darul is my neighbouring tribe, Singapore, Yuan country, Larrakia, Banjalan, a whole bunch of wonderful Yuan, a whole bunch of Wadri, Halawa, Kulin Nation. Thank you all for being here today. Currently on screen, there is a blue PowerPoint holding slide with text and video boxes and an Auslan interpreter, Miss Siobhan. I'm a queer man in my early to mid-late 30s with brown messy hair, black round glasses, wearing a striped shirt. I'm sitting in front of an abstract cultural painting in my new lounge room with flowers on a coffee table, a housewarming present from a very dear friend, and soft light pouring in. Creative Connections is delivered entirely online. You can choose the sessions that are relevant to your needs and interests. All webinars are free and will be published soon after this live event. Normally takes us around a week. These sessions are focused around 3 topics. 1, leadership, 2, digital, and 3, arts practice adaptation. I encourage you to explore the schedule and choose what you think might be interest of you. Before I hand it over to Dr. Tristan, I've been asked to go through some features and housekeeping on today's session. Firstly, live captioning is available on Zoom. If you can't already see the captions, you can turn them on by clicking the CC button at the bottom of the screen. You can also select to view the full transcript in a window to the right if you wish. Francis Robinson in our team is currently running today's chat, and I invite you and encourage you to utilise this chat feature to share with us your thoughts, ideas, resources with each other, whatever you wish. This chat feature, again, is at the bottom of the screen. A Q&A with Dr. Tristan and myself will occur at the end of today's session. And Francis in the team will be looking after this. And if you have any questions, please pop it into the Q&A section, which is again at the bottom of the screen. And if we don't manage to get back to you in this session, please feel free to email us at leadershipprogram@theaustraliacouncil.gov.au and someone will get back to you. If you're having tech issues throughout this session or something isn't working for you, just raise your hand with the feature down below and Laura Pike in our team will get to you and help you. The Australian Council for the Arts currently has 3 webinar streams. Firstly, we have Think Inside the Square, which weekly occurs on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Creative Connections today at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday and on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Friday will see our First Nations Roundtable for Arts, Creative Independence and Organisations occur. This is between 2 and 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Chair of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Strategy Panel, the charming and the talented Wesley Enoch AM, and Deputy Chair of the Australian Council for the Arts, the delightful, the wonderful Leanne Buckskin, in ongoing series and updates and discussions on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and the arts. Next week, we invite you to join with us the First Nations Arts Awards 2020, formerly known as the National Indigenous Arts Awards. These First Nations Arts Awards recognise and celebrate the outstanding creativity and lifetime achievements of our First Nations cultural practitioners, arts workers and artists. These awards are held annually on the 27th of May, marking the anniversary of the 1967 referendum. So join us next week, the 27th of May, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time online. Please go to the website if you need any details, or alternatively, have a look at our Facebook. Today, however, we have the Dr. Tristan Schultz and of the Gamilaraay people, and Dr. Tristan will be presenting today's Creative Connections webinar titled Workshops and Facilitating Online. Currently on screen, there's a blue PowerPoint slide to introduce the speaker and with Dr. Tristan's name on it and a picture of his wonderful head, if you will. A representative of his people, the Gamilaraay, Tristan is a founder and director of Relactive Creative, a designer and a thinker. Tristan is passionate about communication, strategic design, research, and he works broadly across the field in facilitation design, service design, planning design, social design, graphic design, workshop and events design, public speaking, and arts writing. Currently, he is the Honorary Adjacent Fellow at the University of Technology, Sydney, in the Design School. Tristan holds a Bachelor of Arts in Design, a Bachelor of Design Futures, and a PhD in Design titled Decolonising Design, Mapping Futures, all 3 degrees from the prestigious Griffith University in Queensland. Today, the Creative Connection sets out to ask, how do we produce and deliver engaged and effective online workshops to diverse audiences? And how do we translate our facilitation techniques online with new methods that we can all use? Many artists are facilitators. Our physical spaces of teaching and facilitating are adapting. Tristan will provide background and key considerations on what he considers best practice in engaging and delivering online sessions. Dr. Tristan, I hand it over to you. Thank you so much for being here. We're so thrilled to have you involved with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Hello, everybody. You should be able to see a green screen with Workshops and Facilitating Online as the title. And a subtitle, How do we design and facilitate a remote collaborative experience? So that's what I will be talking about today. I being me, Tristan Schultz, founder and director of Relative Creative, wearing a blue jumper. got a nice graze on my head from surfing. That's how you'll know it's me. And I'm here at my studio at Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast. This is where I am, very close to right here, Jullagal, Burleigh Heads. Beautiful place in the world. I pay my respects to our elders past and present in this area and wherever you are as well, as Ian has so eloquently laid out. So my Gamilaraay and European heritage shapes and informs my interdisciplinary design experience. So you're looking at a kind of a slide of a bio of me and my face right there. And I'm founder and co-director of Relative Creative, and I've published and spoken in numerous places, as well as done practice, and I lectured for many years. And I'm honorary adjunct fellow at University of Technology, Sydney. So that's just a quick screen grab of our website, Relative Creative. We design communication, strategies, services, experiences, and events that help people think, talk, and mobilize sustainable futures. And we do this under the rubric of either design lab situations or design work with briefs, or we also develop resources and things like that as well. So as has been mentioned, I'm going to be here talking about remote facilitation or workshops and facilitating online. And I want to make sure at the outset that you feel welcome and make it clear that this is for you. This is the technical parts of this discussion are suited to anyone who is able to send an email, for example. So I've got the agenda on screen here. After I go through some introductions, I'll have a quick look at some principles and then talk about the kinds of people that would be in the room when you're doing facilitation. And then we'll get into some facilitation tools as well. And hopefully I've got plenty of time to show you some examples and perhaps even bring up some of those tools on my screen, sharing my screen. So because of COVID-19, you probably like me can't go and do this together. We can't do much at all together. Sorry, can everybody still see my screen? Let me make sure. Yes. Okay. So we can't do these kinds of things together. These are pictures of me facilitating yarning circles using visual dialogue. And usually I use, oh, look at all those yeses in the chat. Thank you for all those yeses that you can still see my screen. Usually we use a visual dialogue like this with circled cards with line work on them, and people can draw on those cards and on the other side write ideas based on prompts we've given them, and it adds a whole dimension to a yarning circle or a talking circle, a vernacular Indigenous word yarn, basically meaning a deep and respectful dialogue. And I start all my facilitation processes like this when it is face-to-face. So one of the things I had to come to terms with was how to start that remotely as well. So, but before we go on and talk about that, I wanted to pose this question to you. Is remote facilitation actually what you need? Is there a strong enough reason to gather people and expect them to share your stories with you? This is a really important question to ask yourself as a facilitator, because facilitating is really laborious for our participants and for us. And it's only got more laborious doing all of this remotely. If the question is yes, then we can start to think about how facilitation can be designed. So we're looking at text on screen here that says planning your facilitation and co-design engagement should be considered a design project in and of itself. And this is only more the case in online facilitation. There's some great opportunities in remote facilitation, and you're looking at some dot points of those opportunities. Some simple ones like remotely located people can of course be included. People with accessibility restrictions can also be included, meaning they don't have to travel somewhere, they can be in their space online. Or just more generally, people can be in their own comfort zones for whatever reasons they may be. But it also means that we can take advantage of dynamic remote tools. And I'm going to show you a couple of those tools a little bit later on. And one of the great things is we can have a broad range of people from across the world chiming in. But there are also some threats. And so here are some dot points of those threats. One of the clearest ones that you might have noticed, if you're like me doing lots of Zoom meetings, is that a lot of body language can be lost. We can't read the room. We can't read the body language of other people. And so we completely have to rely on what we are saying, and we have to rely on attracting our attention through the gaze of the eye looking at the screen. So all those things around us are lost, which means we also lose agility to respond and shift in accordance with the mood of the room. It means we don't have those informal yarns and moments beyond processes on screen, those water bubbler moments. But the next two are a little bit deeper and more philosophical. When we have to remotely facilitate, what's actually going on is technology, this video conferencing technology, is mediating our ability to communicate with one another. And so it's determining the way in which we communicate to a certain extent. This goes on for a simple video conference or for a really complex remote event. And so that can be reductive and be a bit of a problem to think about. And then the last one, the long view. Where is all of this going? Is something that I always like to think about, even if it's a simple remote workshop or something more grand, is how is this connected to us giving over to technology? And where is our distinction between reality and hyper reality being blurred over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 odd years? By the same token, the battles must rage on. If you're anything like me, just because of COVID-19, it hasn't stopped things like climate change, like colonialism, many other wicked problems where people need to come together and deal with how to navigate themselves through these kinds of futures. And so as a facilitator and designer, I like to be involved in all stages of a workshop, whether it's remote or not. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see the basic list of stages that a facilitator would be involved in a workshop: proposing, recruiting, planning, designing, pre-event communication, the event itself, sense making, post-event giving back, evaluation, and ongoing communication. But now if I add some text to the right side of the screen, being considerations in a remote workshop, we can see that it can get a little bit more dynamic and complex. So in a remote workshop proposing, we would need to understand if our stakeholders or our partners are technically able to do this with us, such as Australia Council with this whole Creative Connections process. They are technically literate to conduct this process. In recruiting, we would be asking whether our participants have the technical literacy, but whether they even have the ability to have the technologies that's required of them. And then in planning, we would test those technologies. We would design, well, iterating with the tools. And in the pre-event communication, we would be sending links and other technical requirements, not just a pre-event book with some readings. And then the event itself finally happens. And just as our lovely Ian did today, he began with online etiquette, explained the interface, and explained how this is traveling and recording and things like that. Then we need to make sense of what's happened. Now, in a face-to-face facilitation process, that usually happens with butcher's paper and post-it notes and people writing notes. But we need to make sure the same thing is being captured online. So there's software that can do that for us. And there are other ways that I will have a quick look at a little bit later. And then post-event, the most important part for me is to give back, to return those ideas to those people that you've been working with. Also, there would be evaluation, and that can happen through a quick follow-up video conference or online surveys. But one of the important considerations is in this online environment, how do we continue to give participants a voice remotely? So do we need to set up ongoing Zoom sessions or a virtual space where they can continue to give feedback and be involved in a dialogue? So now I'm going to talk a little bit about principles. So what I mean by principles is, as I've had to go through this process, just like everybody else over the last few months, to really hone my skills in remote working and keep my battles raging on for big and major projects that I would usually do face-to-face, now transitioning them to remote. What principles can I set for myself? And so I sort of undertook a bit of an analysis of what's out there, how people talk about principles of remote facilitation, and added some ideas myself. And you're looking at a screen with 11 remote facilitation principles on them. The 11 are: be flexible, structured, participatory, respectful, ethical, articulate, humbly confident, a tracker, human, be an example, and be reflective. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, be flexible because we're all in this new world together of this remote virtual working. We need to be flexible to try on what fits best for us and chuck it out if it's not. By the same token, we need to be structured. Facilitation is not just about having an open dialogue and just a general discussion. It is about structuring an ordered set of steps so that you can elicit the best information out of people in the shortest amount of time and track and capture that. So that requires structure, but it's nothing if it's not participatory. It's all about participation, giving people an ability to author their futures, their voice, and do all of that respectfully in many different ways. Do it ethically. So that could be simple stuff like if you're seeing everybody's screen in a video conference and you can see last year's budget on the back behind them, then you might ethically consider it's a good idea to let them know. Be articulate, be clean and articulate yourself, but also encourage others to be articulate. And if things are coming across in a confusing manner from other people, as a facilitator, understand how to synthesize what they're saying and relay it back to everybody. And all of this requires a humble confidence. I like to call it a performance when I'm facilitating. It's a performance because for me, sometimes I'm not so confident, but I certainly need to bring it when I'm facilitating. But of course, no one likes to bring it. You're bringing it too much, so you need to be humble at the same time. And also try and imbue that same humble confidence on others to have them give them their voices. Be a tracker. This is the most important part for me. Facilitation is about tracking the patterns of information that are occurring in front of you and having the ability on the fly and afterwards to give back that information. Be human. Don't give ourselves over to the bots, to the remote technologies and tools that are so seductive chuck them out and be human if you need to be. Meaning just ring and say, look, I'll give you a call later on. Be an example, show examples of how all of this can work in a remote facilitation. People completely don't understand how we might be able to do, say, visual storyboarding together or visual thinking, visual collaborating together. So show examples and be reflective of all of this along the way. So what kind of people would be in the room? Oh, lost a slide. Oh, there it is. People in the room. It can pretty much go into these four categories. There's always facilitators, hosts, panelists, and attendees. And I've given some dot points on the screen here about each of those. In remote facilitation, we usually, especially in big facilitation experiences, we would need more than one facilitator, because I, as facilitator of this conversation, really have to dedicate my time to keeping your attention. I can't keep up with the technical support or the scribing as well. So those two people are useful to have, as well as co-facilitators. And then there's hosts. In this case, we've got Australia Council, and we know very well that Australia Council are here in the room with us. And this is important for your participants to know that stakeholders, key partners, hosts are not silent, secret, passive observers, because that can become unethical and intimidating to attendees, but they're there, and that's made clear that they're there in the room. I like to think about it like this. Imagine if you were all in a room, there was a facilitation happening, and secretly the host or the key partner slid in the back door, sat down very quietly, and tried to be very quiet so that they didn't break up the conversation, but actually everybody heard that they came in. It changed the dynamic of the room. It's the same in this remote setting. And that goes too for panelists or subject matter experts. When they come in, it should be made clear that they have arrived, and when they're not speaking, we would encourage them to still remain active. And then there's attendees or participants. So there are some general rules going around for the amount of participants or attendees. If you have 12 attendees, it's usually pretty safe to just host an open dialogue, meaning in a Zoom conference like this, I would see all of your faces, you would see all of everyone else's faces. If your microphone was not on mute, you could hear everybody, and a facilitator would just maneuver that conversation. Once it gets more than 12, it starts to get quite hard in the digital space. And there's other words that are used for it, like a webinar or a conference. And platforms like Zoom or Google Hangouts or Skype, they use different terms to explain the different settings that you can set up to make sure that you're facilitating the right way for the right amount of people. So what are the practical requirements? There are at least these on the screen here. The practical needs and requirements of people remotely participating. So things like access to a laptop and desktop and the internet and a webcam and headphones with a microphone and confidence using a computer. And then some other more detailed things or soft things rather than hardware, like access to a well-lit private room. And this is really important, that you in your pre-event communications explain to people that they should have access to a well-lit private room so that they can feel confident to say what they want to say without people beside them or behind them hearing what they're saying. Just the way as if they turned up to a real workshop, they've given themselves over to that space and they will feel confident to be there. We need to encourage the same virtual environment for people. Some people will need a backup person for help as well. So if they're not computer literate, they might explain that there's a person there with them to help them log on, show them where the chat is, etc. alternative contacts and phones, but most of all, enthusiasm, finding the way as a facilitator to encourage everybody to be enthusiastic. So I've put up a slide now, Q&A. Go to the Q&A feature in Zoom. I'm just going to leave it there for about a minute so we can have a little bit of breathing space before I carry on. Okay, I've got a couple of questions. So just want to confirm everyone can still see the Q&A screen. I just learned a new tool in Zoom is that you can't see the Q&A screen very well when you're on full present mode in Google Slides, like I am, like you're viewing my slides in. But one of those questions was about what are my favorite tools? And I'm going to explain some of those in a minute. And the other question, let me get back to that. Young children, favorite tools, unexpected internet outage, training sessions for people not familiar with Zoom. All right, I'm back here, just confirming, can still see Q&A, go to chat feature. All right, so for young people, it's funny because young people are really capable with technologies, with computer technologies in particular. And it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds on the other side of the fact that all of our young people have been doing remote facilitation for the last 3 or 4 months. The whole of Australia, all of their teachers have been remotely facilitating their learning using these tools. And so I think we'll give it a couple more years and they will be teaching us a lot of new ways how to do it. But as a general kind of piece of advice is young people like metaphors, they like themes, they like a picture means 1,000 words. And so you need to think about it like it's more multiple modes coming together, videos, interesting, quirky pictures, questions and prompts. So more interaction. If there's an internet outage, none of this is going to work. This is true. And there's nothing we can change about that. So that answers that question. We would need to ring those people and defer to phone calls. So we would build into our contingency plan, what would we do if we need to ask these same questions by phone to individuals, because you won't be able to have a group call either without internet. And are there training sessions for Zoom? Yes, Zoom themselves will offer all kinds of training sessions for Zoom if you were to Google that. All right, let's carry on. So we're getting towards looking at tools now. And access to tools. I've got a screen saying access to tools, questions to ask yourself as a facilitator. So before I show you these tools, and before you consider what tools are right, the actual question is, what access to any tools will people even have? So people brought up internet outage, but there's another thing called what operating environment do people have? So the standard operating environment is the space that they're allowed to operate in. If you're an organization, maybe you've been given Office 365 as your operating environment. or Google Suite as your operating environment. If you're an individual, your operating environment is open as long as you want to pay or subscribe to whichever things. But what it comes down to is, as an individual or an organization, how are you considering what is safe? Consent, transfer, and storage of data policy. And then that determines the operating environment. So the tools I'm about to show you, some of them are kind of a G Suite, some of them are from Office 365, but most of them are independent of those two major players. If you are inside those spaces, those two players, G Suite and Office 365, and others are not, you can usually offer guest passes or visitor sessions using some of those tools. So let's have a look. There's at least these 6 ways to think about tools for facilitating online. Organizing tools, sharing tools, communicate anytime tools, or otherwise known as synchronous tools. Asynchronous, communicate anytime, not in real time, asynchronous. Communicate in real time, synchronous. Or visual collaboration tools, which are a bunch that you may not have heard of. The atmosphere setting tools that I've written there is just simply things like, should there be a playlist? Should you have Spotify or in the background, music in the background? What is the tone of the screen and the slides? And what tool helps you create the best tone? So the next slides are detail of each of these. And as I go through them, I don't want you to worry too much. I'm not going to explain all the words. There's too many words on there for me to explain. Just know that it gives you a snapshot of the breadth of stuff that's out there. And you can come back and pause and Google some of those terms later on. So organizing tools, in other words, scheduling or project tracking or recruiting tools. So for recruiting, as with face-to-face, often we use recruitment agencies like Focus People or Farum, but you can just simply use Facebook or LinkedIn and reach out to participants. For scheduling online, since we can't sort of get in an office or see people face-to-face, we can use scheduling apps such as Doodle or Calendly. And these are things where you'll get emailed a grid of, say, a week. It will all be gray, and you can tick green, green, red, red for the hours and days that you are available. The tool will then aggregate everybody's availability and spit back the best time for everybody to meet. Consenting tools. So there's some really neat ways to consent when you're doing remote facilitation. You can quite simply just ask people to say yes, write yes in the chat feature once you've asked a question. You could ask them to record, if you're recording your session, you could ask them to say the words, I consent to X, Y, Z, and it's then recorded. You could also use one of these phones, and you could draw on a piece of paper the words, I consent to X, Y, Z, take a picture of that, text it to your participant. They will open it, and with whatever tool that's already in here, they'll scribble their signature, and then they'll text the picture back to you, and you have a digital signature. And then there's more advanced tools like Consent Kit as well. There's project management tools, lots out there, big ones and little ones. The 3 biggest players are Asana, Basecamp, and a thing called Atlassian. But if I get a minute, I will show you Trello, which is a nice, simple project management tool that I use in the studio and I would use to plan a facilitation event. But you can also use things like Google Doc. So with any of these tools that I'm mentioning, the key is making sure that those tools you can share with people while you're doing it. So sharing tools, you could use Facebook and WhatsApp and those more traditional methods. You could be doing it inside Google Docs. But recording, Zoom, you can record. You can record using QuickTime on your MacBook, record your screen and what's happening on it. And then there's transcription services out there as well. So I've named some of those on this screen. The next screen, I'm just naming some communication anytime tools. So the ones that you know of are Facebook. That's us communicating anytime. There's a more professional space called Slack, which is sort of like dynamic instant messaging and communicating like Messenger does at the same time. And I'll show you that interface in a moment. This slide has a lot of information about Zoom. And then it also names Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, and Skype as the other key players for video conferencing. And then that other one that you might have heard of called House Party, which is a bit of a new and novel light-hearted app for face-to-face social networking, but I reckon it could be good for online facilitation if you want that kind of atmosphere going forward. So the big thing to understand about Zoom is there's a free account and a paid account. With the free account, you'll get cut off after 40 minutes if you're the host. With the pro account, you can go for 24 hours if you really want, which I would not recommend. Okay, the next slide names a lot of tools that are all known as kind of visual collaboration tools. Now, Google Docs, Google Slides, Dropbox Paper, Microsoft OneNote, many of you out there would have access to immediately. And if you do, you probably also have access to Google Jamboard and Microsoft Whiteboard. Those two are what known as virtual whiteboards as a term. And I'll show you what that interface looks like in a moment. Then things can get a little more dynamic. So they were basic visual collaboration tools. Dynamic visual collaboration tools. The two key players globally are Miro and Mural. They decided to name themselves very similarly. And they're both free to a certain amount. They're independent from Google and Microsoft and those players. I've named some other things there, but I'll let you Google those a little bit later. So, what does a quick glance of a couple of case studies look like? A quick glance of these tools. So I'm going to show you the interface of each of these, and then I'll go back, stop sharing my screen of slides, and just open each of these tools and just have a 10-second play in each so you can see it move around. But this is the interface of Trello. This is the interface of Paper Dropbox, which is just a fancy Google Docs, just a Word document really, where people can work at the same time in it together. This is the interface of Slack. So it looks a bit like Messenger. I'll open that up and show you in a minute. Of course, that's the interface when you arrive at Zoom. And the next few screens, I show you a screenshot of the interface of some visual collaboration tools. So this is a template, an example of Jamboard, Google Jamboard. This is an example of Mixed.io. This is an example of MindMeister. Miro is the next slide. And that's an example of actually using Adobe Illustrator, so a professional design program to do facilitation with. So I'll come back to show you a couple of those tools in a moment. But first of all, two slides I wanted to mention. If they were all tools for facilitation, you still need, I'd call them structure for engaging with people online. But what about the methods and the content to place in your structure? So I wanted to share with you two tools that I go to sometimes. The first is a World Economic Forum tool called Strategic Intelligence. That's a screen grab of it there on the screen. So you can place in the middle of that sunburst diagram hundreds of different topics and it will sunburst out all of the connections to that topic and then give you a summary and publications and readings on the right-hand side of the screen. So that's a really great icebreaker. It's good to help people think big and blue sky as well. Same with the next slide called Drivers of Change from Erupt. It helps you investigate key global issues and trends driving change, and the app works really well with that one. So what does a couple of examples look like of mine? I'll show you on the next slides, but this slide I'm showing you, I guess, an agenda. For almost every time that I'm facilitating, I would ask myself, does it not fit in this general agenda, which is an opening, a respectful opening, such as an acknowledgement or a welcome to country, an icebreaker, your virtual room etiquette, explaining the agenda, and then methods coming mostly from sort of a design and strategic background through the middle in the darkest circles there. So virtual yarning and visual dialogue, mapping, relational mapping, so open and divergent thinking, and then coming in to speculate futures of whatever our topics are, and then building a matrix and really cleaning it up and understanding the impact and the effort it might take to bring that idea into existence. And then some sort of synthesizing all of that and deciding on the next steps and a respectful closing. So this case study here, it shows a scoping workshop with a client. As I was bringing on board this major project, we had to do a Zoom video conference, and I mapped out with that client together different ideas using Jamboard, as you can see in a screenshot there. And it worked really well. And I'll show you Jamboard in a moment. This case study was undertaken a couple of weeks ago. I was invited to respond to an artist's work in an exhibition. And because of social isolation, I had this idea where I could facilitate a virtual whiteboard interview. And I put all the artists' photos on the screen, and we scribbled all over them as we spoke to each other using Zoom. And so the screen recorded us messing around in the virtual whiteboard and us on Zoom speaking. And that was our official submission to the exhibition and response, my response to her work. Coming up, I have many major workshops to facilitate online. I am part of a team who are working with the Tongan government on their long-term low emissions strategy, which will see us facilitating at least 3 online workshops with 40 people from Tonga in each, exploring visions and pathways for a 2050 zero carbon Tonga. Of course, I was meant to be there doing that, but now I'm not. I'm here doing it and not going to Tonga 4 times this year. The Indigenous Business Australia Futures Forum will be facilitating multiple layered workshops and events online with at least 40 or 50 leading Indigenous social change agents from across Australia. Future of work planning, we're working with the government to facilitate stakeholder engagement workshops, and that will be online with over 50 people individually to explore their user needs amidst the future of work. And the Indigenous framework with my art centre here, the Gold Coast Arts Centre, facilitating online workshops as well. So that's the end of my session. If I've got time, if I'm allowed, and if you're allowed to stay, I can bring up a few tools and show you, but I'll let Ian chime in and let me know.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tristan. Very interesting and wonderful to share all of these wonderful resources with everyone who's joining us today. It's terribly useful. I'm just conscious of our time, so you have to forgive me, Doctor. We've got some wonderful questions. Would it be okay if I could ask you them?
Yes.
Someone says, when wouldn't you use online facilitation? Now, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I had that dot point in there, but I took it out for the in the spirit of time. But you wouldn't use it when it just makes more sense that you should not be putting the burden on people to take their time. That's the equation. Is what you're doing worth taking people's time from them and asking of them their stories, and what are you doing with that? And so if the answer is actually, it's probably easier if I just sit and watch from afar, or I just do some user research online, or if I need to actually just wait and immerse with people when I'm allowed to again, then that's going to be the answer. But the equation is what I'm trying to undertake here worth taking the time from people and the labor it takes for them to give over that knowledge?
With that in mind, we've got another question here saying, what are your favorite collaboration and brainstorming tools online?
So I use Miro as our brainstorming tool. And so I mentioned Miro and you saw a screenshot of it. So Miro is great. You can get it for free with up to 3 boards. And then you have to pay if you want more, but you can actually do, as much as you need inside 3 boards. So Miro is a virtual whiteboard and you can play around inside there, and other people can be playing around with you at the same time. So you'll see their cursor moving and they're scribbling and they're adding post-it notes at the same time as you doing it. So Miro is the one that I would use for collaborating in order to brainstorm ideas.
Another interesting question is from Adriana, and she asks, how have you overcome barriers of participation, such as comfort level of participants in being able to open and apply their own creativity?
So I'm not sure if it's me frozen or you frozen. I'm going to keep talking until we find out. I can only see them after they've been answered. So how do I encourage people? Ian is frozen. Am I frozen? Anybody? Can anybody hear me? Oh, okay. I'm good. I'm going to keep talking until Ian stops freezing. So the question was about how can we encourage people during facilitation? Look, the best encouragement by far is making sure people are prepared, and that means pre-event communication. So they don't arrive at the facilitation experience cold. Most of the facilitation, your work, happens before. Those 2 or 3 hours is the least of your problems. So what pre-event communication have you given them that makes, so pre-readings, but also position statements. Here's what we're trying to achieve here. Here's the position we're coming from. And so people have the time to decide whether they want to still participate in that style or from that position. But there's 2 things that really get people angry and turn a facilitation off. One is transparency. So people need to feel like this process is transparent. You are, as facilitator, enabling everybody to see the process as much as possible. And the second is authorship. Facilitation is about finding the ways that people are authoring what's happening throughout the day. If you have groups of people that feel like they're there, but they're not being heard and they're not authoring that idea, then they'll switch off. So transparency and authorship.
And it's interesting because Dr. Terry was actually talking a bit about that in the first day, what is protocol in the digital space, which is available on YouTube for anyone who's interested. Dr. Tristan, I would like to thank you so much for today. Brother, I'm so proud to be involved with this wonderful session with you, and it's always such a pleasure to work together. We've worked together on several things, so great to have you on board again, and thank you so much for putting your time and expertise to this webinar. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Australia Council for the Arts, for this initiative. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening.
And on behalf of Tristan and I, as we do a bit of a wrap up, I think it would be appropriate for me to acknowledge the wonderful countries that are streaming in today. We have the Dharawal, the Worimi, the Yuan, we have Singapore, we have India, we have Philippines, we have the Wurundjeri, we have Palawa, we have Yagara, we have the Bandalan, we have the Bidgal, we have the Eora, we have the Yarl, we have Minjan, we have Amsterdam in Netherlands, we have Malaysia, we have Wujak, Noongar, Wujat, the Murij people over there that we adore. We have Russia, we have Aranda, we have Turrbal, we have Jagara, we have Spain, we have Darik, we have Gandangara, we have Kabi Kabi, and we have Canada. Everyone from the wonderful countries and that you're coming from today via the digital platforms, thank you so much. And I encourage you to pop along to Friday's session at 11 a.m. for Creative Connections, and then that afternoon for First Nations Roundtable with the wonderful Wesley Enoch and Leanne Buckskin. Thank you everyone for your time. Bye.
Woo, thank you.
And thank you, Auslan interpreters. Thank you, David and Siobhan.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.